it was a long journey, but I started as a psychiatric nurse. I became a nurse when I was in Denmark, and I worked for quite a few years, but I've always heard voices all my life, as almost as long as I remember. And unfortunately, well, many things also happened in my life anyway. Well, they started to come in a bad way, if you like, but also memories that I was pushing away, and I began to have great difficulties, and I ended up in the hospital, in the psychiatric hospital, in the same place that I was educated in and everything. And as I usually say, I really learned a lot by being a patient in the same place. And I was there for about 10 years as diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic, chronic, completely given up upon. I was given the highest disability, and they thought there is no hope for me. So that's how I ended up in psychiatry. And then the reason I'm here is I found a way out, thank goodness. For me, I found it by creating meaning with my voices, reconnecting with my spirituality, with my story, my life, and I now work within the hearing voices because that's been meaningful for me. And I'm an activist, of course, probably many people are. One of the things was that which seems quite extraordinary to me when I think about it, and that makes me actually very humble when I do meet people who work in the system, in the psychiatric system, was because I used to work as a nurse in neurology, and there we would never dream of giving any diagnosis without all kinds of not just symptoms, but you had to find it physically, the physical evidence. And then I came into psychiatry as a nurse, and I came into this very strange world. And I was isolated, like many are in the beginning, and there was created this divide. I feel sad that somehow I fell for it, but we all, I think not we all, but many do. I did. I can only speak for myself. And of course, this whole worldwide system, or at least in the whole West, says that this was a real illness, real things, and I forgot to look that how come nobody was taking any tests or anything? How come it was all just by looking at somebody and just, but you know, people came from outside, came from the emergency. So I kind of never thought of it, and I believed it because it was everywhere. It was like I suppose, I don't know, well, it was just there. So it didn't occur to me that it would not be based on evidence and truths, or at least as we know them, and that it was based on other things like money and well, yeah. So when I became a patient of the same thing, many of the and also, no, I think also another important one is that as a nurse, I would meet people and they would be immediately given lots of medicine. And that of course made them, yeah. And we would see them, and I not think that this is not how they are normally. And the family would come, and they say, this is not how my son or daughter is. But we were taught to say, but this is the illness, right? So anyway, when I came into this and tried it, and I tried it on myself, and I learned so much by this. I got all these drugs. I became so fat. I couldn't think. I was dribbling. I was completely incapacitated, and nothing helped with my voices, which was what they were trying to stop. They never went away in all the years, never. But when I came out, which was when I started and was able to reflect, I could start to see, because all it was in my case, it was a man, a psychiatrist, and he had sat there in front of me and said, Olga, you have a serious illness. It's called schizophrenia. And because I'd heard and been taught schizophrenia is chronic, never, I of course was saying, no, I do not. And he was saying, yes, you do. And I said, no, you don't. And then he locked me away for 7 months. And and he was stronger, but it was only words, only words. It is a very, very powerful word, the diagnostic system, because it is a person of authority that can say you have an illness called schizophrenia and you lose your voice completely. Boom. Nobody believed. And my life changed. I was met and seen by my family, by everyone, and it was like entering into a Kafka world. It was, for me, a crazy world. That was crazy, and crazy making. So, yes, so when I came out and reflected and could look back on this, and I realized that there was no evidence. There were, it was just words, but I needed something more. And everywhere I went, I couldn't find it. And then I was very lucky. I found Robert Whittaker's book, Mad in America, which was looking at the Western history of madness and psychiatry. And I read this book, and it just blew my mind. And I thought, oh! And I read it from cover to cover, and I went back, and I looked at every single reference and was checking them out. And it was like I was stuck on psychiatry motorway, no exit. And that had the secret way. And I found a way out, and I discovered a whole world out there that showed that for me, and I'm scientific, I grew up in a scientific family, so I've really studied there, because to me, in the beginning, it was extraordinary that we had a huge system that is going worldwide, invading everywhere, and it is not based on sound science, yet they say it is. I think that is stunning. Yeah. I came out, as I say, I came out of psychiatry, I escaped from psychiatry, and it took a while. I had to decolonize my mind, because I was completely colonized in my way of thinking and everything. And I met some other people who talked about the hearing voices, and I'd actually planned to commit suicide. Because I thought I cannot live this life. But when I heard some people saying, if you take these glasses on your, put these glasses on, sort of virtual ones, or if you like, and look at things from this angle, and you see that your voices and the symptoms and things are not an illness, but are meaningful, and that meaning can be created and placed in a context. And that set me free. I really remember thinking, oh my God, if that's right, then I can live. Yeah. But anyway, 2004, I discharged. They couldn't keep me anymore. I discharged myself, and by that time I'd found somebody who'd work with me as a therapist. I'd started to reduce all my drugs. I'd lost my religion, and I went to a course on, I know it's kind of crazy, but astronomy, on the stars and everything. And there I found my spirituality again, because I thought, this is so amazing that there are worlds and creation and eternity, and it's just, yeah. So that helped me, and it helped bring back one of my voices, my voice that I called God as a child. I thought it was God when I was a child, and I invited that voice back in again. It's called my good voice. Somebody pointed out, if you remove one of the O's, it becomes God again. I had never thought of that. But anyway, I invited that voice back in again. It helped with rebalancing and connecting and many things. So that was, 12 years ago, isn't it? Yes? Yeah? Well, mostly, actually, it's been working in the Hearing Voices movement. So it was started up in Denmark. I was part of starting up the Hearing Voices in Denmark. So we work both self-help groups. In other words, we just meet and we talk about things, many of the things that are forbidden in psychiatry. Some people will hear voices that tell them to commit suicide or kill people or harm children, and they're not, very often, they never talk about, it's not real, it's not that, it's the voices. We always work through symbolism and what can it mean, and the many ways. Most people strangely enough, even in the West, because we tend to think, I think, that spirituality doesn't sort of play such a big role, but it's nearly everyone that comes in will be interpreting their voices in some kind of, external sort of higher being, but usually much more powerful, and usually they find it bad. But we work together and try and find meaning, and in that way, many times people have never talked about their lives or been able to see. So we have this, and that's one of the things I work with. But also the other side is the activism, and the Hearing Voices has focused very much on trauma, and we have chosen to work with also with professionals that are interested and think that there might be other things and find it meaningful, and anybody who does that is always welcome. And I think that's been very, very helpful for us, because there are many people doing research and all kinds of things, and now they keep showing and showing and showing that I was going to say it was the Hearing Voices way. It's not. It's human, because all it is talking together and trying to figure out some things and create meaning. So it's this idea that psychiatry has kind of put a barrier between common sense. I mean, most people think if you're having huge, big problems, usually something in your life is difficult. Yeah, and you can give people drugs, and what's a pill going to do for your life? Anyway, I could go a completely different direction. So we have the activism, and one of the things that I personally have focused on has been the drugs, because I found that was so debilitating for me. It destroyed my I couldn't think. I loved to read. For 10 years, I couldn't concentrate. I couldn't read. I sometimes, because it's always like that, many different dosages, mixes and things. Sometimes I couldn't even, when people spoke to me, it took such a long time before the words came in and I could find an answer, and then the conversation was long gone. So people started to say, oh, this schizophrenia is destroying her mind. She's becoming cognitively deficient, I think was the words they used. Yeah, and things like that. So that's been my focus, and actually one of the big focuses of the Hearing Voices. So we've put trauma, because there's so much evidence for that, up against the biological model. And that's been our, if you like, the most powerful. And I think that fits very much in a Western context, the idea of trauma, because if you introduce spirituality, because for many people, finding a way in that is also beautiful. But that one is difficult in a Western psychiatry. That's poo-pooed, right? Yeah. I think probably like most of the Western world, many countries decide, oh, that's a good idea, except, but, not possible in our place, So, but that doesn't stop us, of course, because we do demand our rights, and one of the most simple ones is the right to say no. Many times people hear demands to say no, and the right to say no, as you're stopping people saying yes. That's one of those crazy arguments that I get. No, if people want to use psychiatry, they can. I think information, the treatments and things people should be properly informed. To me, it's like smoking. We used to say smoking was cool and didn't harm you, and gradually the information got more, and they fought against it. Now everyone does know, usually, I think, pretty well informed, and people there are some people that will still choose it, and I think that's fine. But it's not fine if you're told that it's not going to harm, that there are lies and untruths around it. So I think, especially in terms of force, that is no. But Norway, for example, is going to try and open some wards, medicine-free wards, and see how that goes. But that one, we certainly have not succeeded. But we have succeeded in trying to make people think about it, and for example, some very simple, cheap research that was done in Denmark called talking. They discovered that if you talk to patients before when they come in and ask them, is there any way we can avoid forced treatment or force? And if it did happen, they talked afterwards with the patient. That reduced it by, I can't remember the figures, but it was something massive, 70+%, as simple as talking. Unfortunately, what happened was once the research was done, and it cost nothing, just kind of stopped. But now they're reconsidering it. So in Denmark, they're trying, so you can't be tied for a belt, what do they call it in English? Belts, you know, when you're tied. That they're trying wards without that. But what we see now is a massive increase in, there's an increase in drugs instead. So, and for me, I think being forced something into my body is one of the worst things. I've been a victim of sexual abuse and assault, so it really is very triggering, and it's always struck me as extraordinary that people can then afterwards come and say we were doing that to help. It's like the rapist saying, I was only doing it for your own good. Well, anyway. This is my first INTAR, so look, I mean, I'm here, my first INTAR in India, and wow, and look at this beautiful setting, yeah. But I've been to other conferences which I could sort of use as a comparison, maybe slightly. And what I really like about this one is that for me it's so diverse, multicultural in the true sense. For me, I love to hear about all these other countries that we don't usually, or very often in tiny little Denmark, hear about, right? What I'm thinking is this sense of hope, and I'm personally what I'm hoping that will happen here at INTAR is that ideas can be, especially within the community, that psychiatry is a traditional Western way of thinking of building asylums and then creating through language, going through into the whole of society and taking over and colonizing people through language, right? Is that somehow could be stopped at least, and maybe a focus, because I think that's where it is the focus has to be in the community. Psychiatry is too powerful, you can't keep it out, but maybe divert it so it doesn't go into the way that we've done and are fighting and trying to fight for our human rights, because it doesn't matter really, but anywhere we go, I think what I do see is that if our voices can be silenced, they will be silenced, right? So I think where it is out in the community and to involve the community. And that's because that's certainly from my perspective, what we've been trying to do is we never, personally I don't think there's much point in trying to talk to psychiatry, to people in psychiatry in there. I talk to the people, the mothers, the fathers, the brothers, the sisters, and that is where things happen, because they are involved with the person there, their loved ones, right? So if it can be done, and that's the sense that I'm picking up, that there is a great interest that it must remain community-based. And then I'm hearing about projects and things that are where I think, I wish we could do them. They cost so little, why don't we use them? We spend billions on a system that just handicaps people and shortens their lives on average. What are we doing? Yeah, so I find it amazingly inspiring, and I'm so amazed. I met Bhagavi for the first time in Leicester, in England, and talked there, and she told me about the Bapu Trust, and I was thinking, wow, that work that she's been working for years, isn't it 15 years, something like that, and now arranged this, that kind of energy, and the energy you feel here, it's wonderful. I'm so happy with that. Thank you. Yeah.